Hello and welcome to the 2 Minute Drill Podcast. I'm Michael Rochman. That's Saavaidra over there. And today we are going over the last of the summer scouting, and it is our sleeper defensive backs, some of the cornerbacks and safeties that might be able to sneak their way up the ranks after another strong season of play in 2024. We are finishing up our 2023 evaluations, but through the college football season, which has already started, but the first Saturday is about to start here in a couple hours. You can catch us here on this channel. We're going to try to stick with it through the entire season with updates about, some standout performances, some more podcasts about, players to watch throughout the course of the season, some mock drafts coming for you, some NFL content as well. So stick around on 2 Minute Drill because we've heard the complaints, going into the dead period of draft season. A lot of people were saying like, man, you guys got to post something. So we're following through this time around and we will be producing season long football content. But let's dive into some of these sleeper Saavaidra. We got some exciting defensive backs, and I know that you have some cornerbacks that you're really looking forward to explaining to the audience, that they need to pay attention for the 2024 season. So why don't you reveal sleeper number one for yourself?
All right, for the first sleeper, I guess I'm going to go with Xavier Scott at Illinois. He's a little on the smaller side. He's more of probably a slot defender. Good tackler. His change of directions, not great, but his timing and ability to really disrupt guys at the catch point's really good. And I think he's got that ability to eventually start creating turnovers and eventually become more of a stout player. It might be a year or two. It might be this year, might be the year after, but I think he can get there. And it's Illinois who has produced quite a few guys in recent years.
Yeah, he was someone that was playing kind of in flashes alongside Witherspoon. I remember him catching my attention because he had that same kind of mentality out on the boundary whenever he was working in rotation there. And he's kind of taken over as a slot cornerback for Illinois, but they've had him working both inside and outside. He's been able to prove that he can perform in both spots. I'm really excited for him. He's someone that I'm not necessarily like thinking he's gonna blow the charts off and just completely fly up the boards, but 5'11", 190 pounds. I think he's a solid athlete. I think he plays a little bit bigger than his size is listed. So all those traits combined with the ball production that we've already seen and the Illinois development that we've seen for some of these other guys, I think this is someone that we're definitely going to be talking about this season as someone who's rising up the ranks and is getting some draft hype.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he'll probably be a riser this year, and maybe he'll end up in this draft, if Illinois has a good season, but then there's probably a good chance he goes back as well and just ends up being like a 2026 focused guy.
Yeah, he had 11 pass deflections, so he's someone that's very
Mhm.
exciting in terms of ball production. 2 interceptions as well. He has the ball skills and he has some of these traits that you're kind of looking for in these cornerbacks that you're going to draft in April. So NFL teams are definitely going to be intrigued, assuming he declares.
Mm-hmm.
So now moving forward to my sleeper, number one, we're going to start with Justin Walley, a guy who has already had a tremendous start to the 2024 season in his game against North Carolina, got an interception. He's someone that, I had on this list before we started. I just want to put that out there. I'm not being reactionary. This is based on 2023, I promise. But 5'11", 195 pounds, a guy that is very kind of feisty, scrappy at the outside part. He can play in the boundary. I think he's very quick footed and has some nice fluid hips, which allows him to kind of mirror his assignment. But he plays aggressively despite being maybe a little bit under that 6 foot mark to where some people may view him as a little smaller than the average corner. But I don't know, everything in terms of just what he offers for ball skills, what he offers for just that overall kind of tenacity that you need on the outside to match up with bigger wide receivers. He has that. Part of his identity in this Minnesota defense is just that scrappiness and that toughness. And I think he really brings it. He's a great leader for the secondary. He's been a consistent part of the defense for a long time. I think he's going to have a huge season. I was kind of expecting Minnesota to have a pretty big year just because of the like combination of talented pieces around the roster that sometimes that just adds up to a successful season. I still think that's on the table. They perform better against North Carolina than I think some would expect, but there's definitely some steps that still need to happen for that team. But I think Justin Walley's like a piece that is going to be a stud week in, week out. He had a great 2023 season. He looks to be on the right track for 2024. This is a guy that I have as like a maybe late day two type pick. It wouldn't shock me if he kind of went up the board a little bit, snuck into that early day two type of conversation.
Yeah, he's another guy that I had my eye on for a while too, just because he is really good. I used to follow the three Fs for cornerbacks. That was just a personal thing I made up for myself, which was football IQ, footwork, and fluidity. He's got all three of those for sure. And I've abandoned that a while ago, but he's got the other things that you really need to. He's pretty physical, which is good. I think he's a good tackler, and he doesn't hit with like a lot of stopping power because I don't know if he's really that well built. But I mean, I just think he's really got all the skills you need to play in the NFL and have like a defined role and just be a good player.
Yeah, and I think he's someone that, assuming the production continues to stick throughout the season, not necessarily interception every week, but if he's able to capitalize on this early one and add another one or two over the season, we're expecting a nice increase on the numbers that were already pretty impressive in 2023. So Wally's on the right track, and I'm really excited for what he can do in 2024. But now let's hear your second sleeper.
Yeah, I think for my second sleeper, I'm gonna go with Jordan. Is it Oladokun or is it Oladokun? Because I'll be honest, I watch tape with no sound.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know either. I think it might be Oladokun, but I'm
Yeah,
not
I think I
positive.
think it's I think it's Oladokun. That's what I've heard for his brother in the NFL. So he's a Mac guy. I love the Mac. He's Bowling Green's best remaining corner after Jalen Husky left for Maryland. He's another guy that's probably more of a slot player. His size isn't super good, but his back pedal is good. He's a smooth player. I would describe him as. He always moves to the right spot. He's got the right footwork going on. I think his stop start ability is not very good. I think that's the real issue with him right now is it really puts a cap on his long speed and it puts a cap on his ability to like defend comeback routes. He can get stuck pretty easily.
Yeah, he's someone that I think has the size to continue to remain on the outside for Bowling Green. I think even in the NFL, he's going to potentially have that chance. The four interceptions obviously pop off the page because you love to see
Yeah.
that type of ball production and that type of playmaking ability to end drives, create those big game changing turnovers. I don't know. I like the pacing as well. I think the instincts are there to where I trust him as a smart player. Maybe the athleticism isn't necessarily there to where it's going to hurt him trying to move up the ranks, especially in that like kind of combine season where these G5 guys tend to kind of really market themselves and move into those higher pick selections. But I do think that this is someone that early day 3 type of range, I wouldn't be surprised he gets selected into the right landing spot and really kind of carves out a role for himself in the team and eventually is a pretty consistent starter in the league.
Yeah, I think he can get there. I think it's going to take a little bit of work, and I don't like you said, the combine is where these smaller school guys really sell themselves, and I don't think he's going to really sell himself there. So it's going to have to be at like the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and the Senior Bowl is going to have a lot of interesting options, but I think this is one of the better bets if they're looking for the small name market. I think guys like Oladokun really have the skill set, the combination of like success on the stat sheet, but also like on tape like play that you can kind of see, and then the real talent that translates over to the league that I think makes him a perfect fit. But we're not Jim Aggie, so we'll see what happens for his postseason ventures. But I'm excited for him. I do think he's a very talented defensive back. And another talented defensive back that I have as my sleeper number 2 here is Jacob Parrish, a guy that has been really steady for Kansas State during his time with the Wildcats. And he had 4 interceptions last year. Very scrappy. I think one of the biggest issues when it comes to him is another guy that probably struggles a little bit with deep speed. He had some issues where he and his safeties just there are some really bad communication issues. I don't know if it's on him or if it's on some of the other guys in that secondary, but I don't know. Parrish has some really dependable moments where you can really see some nice flashes. I think he's really good in zone coverage, especially because he kind of drop underneath, crash downhill on the football. I think he reacts well. He's an instinctual player, and I think he has some really nice moments of awareness and play IQ to where he recognizes where the passing is going to head and gets the ball quickly as a result. The ball production is promising. The overall size may kick him inside, which I think is kind of the big question mark is can these boundary corners kind of move into the slot and handle the duties of kind of working with more route technicians types and seeing if they can make sure that they aren't allowing separation on the inside so easily. But I really do like Parrish, and I think he has a hard-nosed mentality to where I can trust him to work either inside or outside at the next level.
Yeah, I think he might kick in even farther and just end up being a safety. But I really love this skill set. I love the agility and I love the intelligence. The football intelligence is so good. But like when you look at like Texas, AD Mitchell just really tore him up. Like any sort of guy with like great size and speed together gave Parrish a lot of issues. Like the deep coverage was not good. The vertical speed wasn't there. But I think like you said, like he's really smart. He'll pick the ball off all the time. He's always in position properly, at least to make the play. It's just whether or not he can keep up and get high enough in the air to stop the ball from getting into the receiver's hands.
Yeah. So now, why don't you take us to sleeper number 3 for yourself?
I think sleeper number 3 for me is going to be Will Lee the third, the other Kansas State cornerback who is now at Texas A&M. He's a tall guy. He transferred up from Iowa Western, I think it was, who won the junior college national championship with him playing corner for them. He's a thin guy. He's got a kind of underdeveloped lower body. He's got like skinny legs. He's not super powerful, bursty, but I think what I really liked the most about him was just the frame. The length is really good. He can get through blocks decently. He's not super tenacious about it, which is disappointing. I wish he was just more gritty a little bit. You know, if he had a little more grit, he'd probably have like a bunch of tackles for loss and stuff. But I think the change of direction is really good for a guy like of his body type. Usually guys like that are kind of stiff, but with him, I think he's got kind of some wiggle to him that he can get around stuff. I do wish the with him too, the vertical speed I just wish was a little better, and he was a little better at positioning himself to actually make a play on the ball. I think sometimes his footwork can get away from him and he can fade off to one side or the other and not be in proper position.
Yeah, it's funny the new regime is in at Texas A&M because he reminds me a lot of Jalen Jones. I think, the size, the physicality on the outside, the ability to kind of operate and run support. I think Woolley still has some flashes to where that you need more consistent play-to-play ability in that regard, but he shows the ability to really kind of hammer in on run support and be able to kind of close off the outside. So I'm really excited in that regard. He's a great press bail type of coverage guy, and I think he has
Oh yeah.
the ability to open up pretty well for someone that's his size. Usually, you kind of see like they try to press, but they're so like focused on how strong they are that they like go all in and then they get beat on those first couple steps. But he's pretty quick in terms of just like managing to put out the punch, but also continue to follow with his footwork. And I like that for him. I think the stride length is there to where it wouldn't surprise me if he turns in a pretty solid 40 times still, even if he's not necessarily the quickest. But still, this is someone that I think has the overall athleticism with an incredible frame to where I'm really excited to see what he can do with A&M, especially in a secondary that had so many struggles last season. I think that him, Chappell, some of these other pieces in that secondary are going to really kind of help the just overall play that happens for the Aggies this year. And as a result, maybe Elko can get a pretty promising season in year one.
Yeah, I think so. I really do think he's the press and then just riding guys down the field is really good. Like he'll stick to a guy pretty well for someone of his body type.
Yeah, and
But
unfortunately, I had to spoil, but sleeper number 3, Tyreek Chappell, a guy
Tyreek
that
Chappell.
has worked inside, outside for the Aggies. I felt like last year, even when Texas A&M struggled, this guy was doing pretty well. I really like his instincts. I think he's a very smart cornerback, and he has some really nice mirroring ability when it comes to just the matching of foot speed, being able to work on routes. I think he's someone that he entered the transfer portal and there was like not a lot of noise around it, but I thought that was really strange because I thought he was a high end corner and I thought any program would be really lucky to have him. He ended up sticking around with A&M. I don't know if that was because of a lack of interest or if he really wasn't like necessarily like looking to move on and he was just kind of trying to make sure that he was still a priority for this new coach. I'm not sure what the situation was, but I think this is a very talented cornerback and I think the Aggies are thrilled to have him back because whether you're putting him in the slot, whether you're working with him on the boundary, he seems to make plays, make things happen. And, even last year when there were so many bad moments for this Texas A&M passing defense, I feel like their veteran was just consistently showing out and making some really nice moments. It's one of those guys that I've been tracking for a couple of years, and I hear like, oh, Texas A&M pass defense is so bad, so I'm like, I need to go back in and rewatch, make sure that Chappell's like not kind of falling off, and I'm still impressed every single time I go back to him. So I don't know, maybe the waiting around too long could have hindered his draft stock and maybe pushed him down to like a day 3 type of selection. But this is someone that I'm really excited about, and I think in the NFL he's going to kind of shine out more and really get some more recognition in the process.
Yeah, I think for me last year, I mean, first of all, and there was another guy last year who entered the portal and who nobody bid on. It was Takario Davis, who's getting a lot more hype than Chappell is. But with Chappell, I really felt like last year the only thing that got away from him was like his tackling and run support just kind of fell off a cliff. Like his angles were really bad last year in ways they weren't before. He just wasn't, I don't know. I don't know if he wasn't as engaged in just making a whole bunch of plays all over the field because everything was such a mess. The coverage, though, was still really good. He's always been really physical and just not afraid to body up like bigger guys than him at the catch point and just get a little nasty there, which I think is good. He doesn't create a lot of turnovers, which, I feel like the NFL is kind of looking for that now, which is sometimes it's weird to me that they are, but I mean, that's just the way things are trending. You want to create more possessions for your team and then throw the ball into too high 3 times and go 3 and out and then punt back to the other team because you refuse to run. But yeah, I still think he can be a pretty good corner in the NFL. Probably a slot though, because he is pretty small.
Yeah, and tackling was one thing that I listed. I felt like, especially in the Miami game, I noticed where it's like this guy was like laying out, and then the ball carrier would just kind of like bounce back a little bit and then just continue their run. So definitely needs to get a little bit stronger or more consistent with his tackling to bring down the ball carrier. But I don't know. I really like the coverage traits, and I think he's someone that, in terms of just adding talent to a secondary, there's a lot of NFL teams who could use him.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that brings us to my last sleeper, who is my favorite of the group easily, and who I think could possibly move all the way up and be like an early day 2, even maybe not day 1, but Maxwell Hairston at Kentucky. He's a skinny guy, another skinny guy, a lot of skinny guys in this corner class, but he has all the traits you'd really want to mold. His technique is pretty sloppy right now, but the athleticism is good enough. The technique is like I said is getting there. The eye, like hand-eye coordination and stuff, like his eye is really good. He knows when to jump stuff. He's pretty aggressive. He'll get aggressive even just downhill as a tackler as well. But there are other times where he'll just get beat, and then some of those tackles are just from him cleaning up his own mess that he made already.
Yeah, I think he's a zone corner. I think he's really good in zone too. I think he has the read and react ability to quickly kind of crash down on the receiver if it's an underneath type of route, or handle any guys that are crossing into his zone. He's got the physicality and just kind of like the over aggressive mentality in coverage that, it's risk and reward, but there's a lot more reward in terms of watching his film. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I expect much less risk as he continues to get more polished, more reps on the field. He's a guy that I'm excited about. I think this is a day 2 type of cornerback, and someone that could very easily kind of work his way up into that day 1 conversation in the right circumstances. And, especially when some of these teams in that back half, like you're expecting guys like Kansas City and San Francisco, who kind of operate with a lot of zone coverage, to maybe be looking at a cornerback, and a guy like Hairston would be a great fit in those defensive schemes. So it wouldn't surprise me if this is someone that we're talking about that really kind of puts together a strong 2024 campaign and then starts to really hear his name more when talked about in the cornerback draft class. And yes, there's some elite names at the top of the ranks, but overall, a lot of names can fluctuate in this process. Guys like Denzel Burke maybe aren't necessarily locked into that first round discussion and could easily kind of drop down. And Harrison hasn't beat with size. I think the athleticism is pretty similar between both of them. So really 2024 is going to make or break a lot of these people in terms of where they end up in these rankings. And Hairston has so much room to move up.
Yeah, I really think this corner class is just really going to be decided by what happens this season. Like everything after those first 3, it's just it could be anybody, or somebody could just materialize at one of these schools. I don't know. Just so many guys could just fly up the boards or just drop off completely.
Yeah, so I also saved my best for last, and I just seem to be high on the Virginia Tech guys. I'm going with Dorian Strong for my last sleeper. He's a guy that had 33 targets this past season, which is already an impressive number. But what if I told you that he's only allowed 17 catches in the past 2 seasons combined? He's someone that is just an absolute stud. Now, I'll be honest, he didn't play as many snaps last season, so that's a little bit of a skewed number, but he only allowed what was it, 9 catches this year, and he had 7 pass breakups on those like 33 targets. He has the ball production that you're looking for in these cornerbacks without getting like tested by opposing offenses. That type of production on so limited opportunities is insane. Like Kool-Aid McKinstry was a guy that kind of got ripped apart for his ball production because he had so few targets. He had 37 and he only had like 3 pass deflections, and there's a lot of people that were kind of worried about that. Dorian Strong is out here putting together like seasons where guys are giving up like 60 targets for like 33 catches, but also have the 7 pass deflections. Like this type of ability with his technique to kind of punch the line, work in press, work off man, work in zone. He has the ability to kind of work in several different schemes. His great size is 6'1", 182 pounds, probably can add a little bit of weight. He is going to be entering his 5th year, which I think kind of hurts in terms of just seeing some of these younger guys where if you're in a similar boat for talent, you're probably going to tend to pick the 21-year-old over the 23-year-old. But
Yeah,
Dorian
most
Strong
of
is
the
someone that
time.
I think is just going to be a very sturdy player in the NFL. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is someone that we're seeing go off the board in like round 3, maybe late round 2, and is still like day one starter and very promising for his team.
Yeah, I think I'm probably a little lower on him just because he is an older player. And I think for him, like he's kind of a skinny guy, he's 180. I don't think he's like a super strong guy or like a super good tackler. I think the jump to the NFL could be, that can be the real test for him. Because at this point, he's done this for like 3 or 4 years now, where he's just kind of lock guys up, put up good ball production. He doesn't create like a ton of picks, but he has enough for the amount is that's actually thrown at him, which is not much. I think part of that's just because Virginia Tech kind of had stinky corners next to him for a while. They had my guy Derek Canteen last year, who I really liked at Georgia Southern like a million years ago, but who is now at Cincinnati. But now, with Mansour Delane there, it's like you got to pick your poison somehow. You're either going to pick the guy who needs to get a little better at the catch point, or you're going to pick the guy that doesn't really allow anything because his technique is just so disciplined at the catch point, but who might get burnt if he actually allows a catch because he's not strong enough to clean it up.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about having to kind of go to a battle of the ground. I mean, Kyron Drones alone is going to beat most teams on the ground, but they have a really nice rushing attack on that team. And, with the cornerbacks kind of just shutting down the opposing passing game, when you're kind of looking at Kyron Jones, when you're kind of looking at Tootin to really see if you can like beat them on the ground, like Jones and Tootin is dominant for rushing attack. So Virginia
Yeah, it's
Tech's
going to
going to
be
be in
really
some
scary.
low scoring affairs, but they're probably going to get the like small advantage in that regard to where the Hokies could be a surprising kind of dark horse team in the ACC, especially if they're able to limit opposing quarterbacks like the Riley Leonards, the Klubniks, and the Cam Wards, where if they can take those guys out of it and they make it a battle of the trenches, don't be surprised if Virginia Tech's able to pull off some big wins this season.
Yeah, I think they could be a scary team. Because they've got it's Kelly Lawson, right? The name of the linebacker that they've got there too. That's
I believe so, yeah.
he's also kind of like a spooky coverage guy that can drop back and do a lot of different things for them back there. So they've really got a lot of pieces that are pretty interesting. I think they're going to be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, they're very high potential, and it wouldn't shock me if they're a team that heavily outperforms expectations. But now, moving forward to some guys who might outperform expectations, some of our sleeper safeties. We have 5 for you. Saavaidra's got 3. I got 2. And we're going to start off with Saavaidra, your first sleeper for the night.
I might as well pick the guy who's least likely to declare this year, but who is, at least to me, one of the most interesting, and it's Ike Larsen, who is a safety at Utah State. First of all, the guy's a special teams demon. He's got 5 block kicks in the last 2 years, and he was also just a monster at that in high school. So that's good. He's got the school record in block kicks already. He's only been there for like 20 games at Utah State, but he's super active. Like just he's always involving himself somewhere because he's so fast at recognizing plays. He's a little small, which is it's fine at safety. Lots of guys are really small there. The athleticism is probably also just like not crazy, but better than a lot of safeties in the NFL who are really good, who have like 4.6 40s and stuff, but who are really good anyway. But the thing for me, it's just the coverage is so good. He's so smart. He's always around the ball. He's got 8 picks in the last 2 years. The pass breakups also went way up this past year, where he was just getting like involving himself and just breaking more stuff up, hitting guys harder, and just developing as a player. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does this year because I know he did turn down offers to transfer up to other schools.
Yeah, 4 interceptions in both past 2 seasons. So he's someone that has the ball production. I think he's got some really nice play recognition and just ability to kind of find himself around the football. I like his just ability to kind of work around traffic to get to the ball and run support as well. I'm not sure about the athleticism. I think that's one thing that I kind of wish that he does transfer up just so I can kind of see how he measures out next to some of these other great P5 guys. But it's not like he looks like a bad athlete. It's just there's times where I'm like, I want to see like the range at that next level. So there's plays though that I see flashes, and I think he's going to be an impactful player for Utah State this season. Now it's just about, can he continue to just be a dominant safety? And if he decides to enter this class, it wouldn't shock me just because there's so much kind of range for the safety class to kind of play out and how they fall off the board, even more so than corner, like we said earlier. So maybe Ike Larsen could be a dark horse or a guy that kind of works his way up the ranks and, could be very easily be maybe like the second or third guy off the board from this class.
Yeah, I really think he could be a major riser if he just puts up another season like last year. Even he could just move way up. But it's, I think, time for your first sleeper safety.
Yeah, so my first sleeper, I'm going to go with Aubrey Burks, a guy that had 2 interceptions, 4 pass deflections at West Virginia last season. Now, look, disclaimer here. The first thing you may do if you're like, oh, Aubrey Burks, let me check him out. You're probably going to see Penn State offense versus West Virginia defense, and you're going to see some really bad moments from Aubrey Burks. But the thing is, it's not necessarily like issues of athleticism or ability. It's just, I think, getting that experience and continuing to grow in that regard when handling those situations. Because right now, I think he has the range and the ability to work as a single high safety guy, and he has the size and physicality to work as a strong safety. But there were so many times where Penn State receivers would cross, and he would completely turn to them as they're working across him and just have no way of picking it up, and Aller would just toast him. I think there is plenty to work on in that regard. Getting the technical stuff, getting the reaction just better. But I do think the traits are there, and I think there's enough flashes of what he can do as a strong safety and split field looks and stuff like that to where I do trust him. And I think that as long as the instinctual play continues to improve and he continues to show more maturity on the field and decision making, I think there's a lot of ability there to where Aubrey Burks could be an intriguing safety for NFL teams to bring in.
Yeah, I think he's kind of a sneaky guy too. Like he knows kind of how to hide himself away and then just break out and make a play. He to me kind of almost looks like he's built like a running back, and he also initiates contact kind of like a running back, where he just kind of boulders into people and just takes them down really easily. And I think that's a great part of it. I think he's a smart player too. Like I think he knows what he's doing, but every once in a while, I think his feet fail him.
Yeah, the lower body's the big issue. I think even the mind is showing some nice flashes. It's just picking up those receivers, working with them more seamlessly. That'll be huge for his progression as a safety and really kind of elevate him when it comes to talking about what he can do in the NFL. But sleeper number 2, who you got?
I think for my second sleeper, I got to pick Billy Bowman. I'll save another guy for last, even though Billy Bowman, I think right now for me is safety two in this class probably. He's small, but he's so smooth. His decision making is really good. He just knows where the ball is going to be all the time. Like he just knows. He's always got it in his mind where the ball is going to be, and he's going to be there. But I do think he's not great at translating his athleticism into making tackles. I think when he hits guys, he kind of shrugs off of them. I think that can get better. I think he doesn't work downhill well. Like if he's up by the line, he's not going to be able to get like past the line of scrimmage and make a tackle there. So that's going to be an issue. But I do think his hand-eye coordination is really good. Like, and I think that paired with his brain is what leads to a lot of these picks because he'll just his hands will just shoot to the ball and he'll have it.
Yeah, and that's something that growing up watching the Patriots, it was this big thing that every defensive back like has to be able to make tackles, but still have to like find ways to shoot their hand, shoot a fist at the football in order to try to get that ball out. And Bowman does that so well to where I think NFL teams are going to love it, especially any defensive coordinators that kind of push that kind of mentality when it comes to going in and making tackles. They're going to love Bowman. I think the instincts, the hand-eye coordination, and the playmaking ability is there. He's a little smaller, and I think there's moments where that kind of shows up because he's a little bit smaller in stature, a little bit smaller in frame. But I do think he outplays his weight. It's just an issue of, can he continuously kind of be like 3 inches smaller than some of the guys he's going to be working with as a safety that he's picking up? So there are some issues. There are some things that hold him back, and some things that he just will never be able to improve on, unless he has a random growth spurt here. But overall, he's a very high-end college football player, and it wouldn't shock me if that continues to translate to some high-end NFL play.
Yeah, I think he could probably make the jump. I think he could have made the jump last year and just gone in the draft and probably been like a round 3 guy already. But he's sticking around to Oklahoma for one more season, so we'll see what he makes of it.
Yeah, so for my last sleeper, I'm going to talk about Sebastian Castro, the slot corner type safety at Iowa, a guy that was sharing that secondary with Wampa, with DeJean. But Castro was the guy that was kind of filling up the stat sheet with 8 tackles for loss, 8 pass deflections, 3 interceptions, a guy that really kind of does it all. I do think that as a slot corner, he shows some issues in terms of mirroring his assignment, where he's not necessarily the greatest athlete. But I think when he gets into the NFL, they're going to have him looking more in that second level, working as a safety that maybe operates closer to the line of scrimmage. And I think he's going to continue to make an impact as an instincts player, showing off some great zone awareness, the ability to kind of recognize the play, pick it up, and hunt down the ball and put a stop on the play. But overall, right now, I do think that production is just going to continue to impress NFL teams. I expect no like fall off when it comes to the 2024 campaign for him. I think he's just a very high end college football player. And I think teams like the Rams, where they maybe are willing to overlook athleticism when they consistently see it on tape for the college football production, I think they'd love a guy like Castro and be willing to bring him in with high expectations for what he can do for their defense.
Yeah, the Rams would love to pair him with Dorian Kendrick and have, I don't know, just a crazy slow secondary, or your corners are running like a 4-7. But no, with Castro, I think it's just there's just a single question for me is he actually like a really smart player, or is he just a really experienced player that's been in college a long time? Because he is going to be 24. He's a late bloomer who didn't really start doing stuff until this past season. But I do love the physicality. I think he's going to be a strong safety in the NFL. I don't think the slot corner stuff's going to happen. I don't think he has the, I guess, the fluidity to really carry guys out of the slot and just stick with them. But I love that the situational awareness is really good. I think he's got a great grasp of what's going on around him. I think he can get a little too antsy with trying to make a tackle. I think sometimes he'll just kind of blow by a guy and somebody else will have to clean it up. But it's Iowa, so of course it will be cleaned up immediately. The guy will only get 2 more yards, and then it'll be time to go back on offense and scare everybody again. But I think really, I think he's a good player. Maybe he'll be like a Jalen Petrie type, and as far as not his role or what he's like, but as far as old player who randomly gets really good and then just goes to the NFL and continues to just be like at least average.
Yeah, and I do think a creative defensive mind is going to have a way to utilize him and take advantage of some of the traits they showcases. But we'll just have to wait and see on that factor. So now let's hear your final sleeper at the safety position.
All right, this guy's probably actually like my safety 3 going into the season, but maybe he'll fall off. It's possible. It's Hunter Waller, who is the strong safety at Wisconsin, who had 120 tackles last year and is sort of kind of like a linebacker, but not really. He's really smart and instinctive. His athleticism's not great, so the room for error is way smaller than with some of these guys. That's why he needs to be that smart. You can blitz him. You can not play him anywhere downfield because he will struggle. He's not going to be able to like have the range to go sideline to sideline down there. But you play him up by the line. He's a demon. He's going to destroy everybody. He'll know what's coming and he's going to get there both like before the offense does. He's going to make the tackle. It's linebacker instincts in a strong safety body with good enough coverage from that spot to make it work.
Yeah, 5.5 tackles last year. Tackles for loss, sorry, not tackles.
Yeah.
Six pass deflections, 2 interceptions. He kind of did it all for the Badgers. And I would agree with you. I'm kind of in that boat where I'm like, man, this guy just seems like a linebacker at times where he's playing like kind of so close to the line of scrimmage. I do question the athleticism. That's the big thing is just like what NFL defense will like take him in and let him kind of play in that same role. So now it's like if he isn't doing that, what does he move to where he's still making that type of impact? And I think there's an opportunity for him to be like a money backer, maybe be like a shallow safety. There's defenses that do utilize guys like that, but it's just kind of finding the right fit, finding the right place for him. As long as the testing is like solid, I hope he does kind of outperform my expectations, but it wouldn't shock me if maybe he comes in a little bit disappointing and then is more of a late draft flyer, kind of seeing what he can do as like a special teams type guy and then seeing if he can work his way up. Whereas if he shows out maybe with this testing where he can kind of work his way into that early day 3 type of range for guys that are really expecting him to be like the second in line at the linebacker position or safety position. And then he gets more opportunities on the field. So I like Waller. I think there's really high end IQ moments for him. And I think he's going to continue to be a stud for the Badgers. But yeah, I mean, it's just that projection that kind of leaves it a little murky for me.
Yeah, it's just what's he gonna do? It's really the testing. If the testing's good, I'm all in. Take him round 2, throw him on the field immediately. If the testing's bad, let him drop to round 5 and then take him anyway. I don't care. The testing doesn't matter that much. All these safeties in the NFL have kind of crappy testing a lot of the time, and then they're really good anyway. It's just, I don't know. And then you have safeties who have amazing testing, and then they're out of the league immediately.
Yeah, well, That's all for the defensive backs. We had some guys that we loved that maybe we didn't get a mention. Apologies out there to Jabbar Muhammad, absolute stud. Some other guys, of course. But that's Saavaidra. I'm Michael Rochman. That's the 2-minute drill. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and enjoy your college football today. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Take care, guys.